Are Brian, so help you God.
I do.
All right, go ahead and have a seat. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is the case of the state of Georgia versus Travis Mcmichael, Gregory Mcmichael, and William R. Bryan, who are charged, each individually and as parties concerned in the commission of a crime by the grand jury of Glenn County with the offenses of murder, felony murder in 4 counts, aggravated assault in 2 counts, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt to commit a felony. I'm going to ask you a number of questions. First, please raise your hand if any of you are related by blood or marriage to Travis Mcmichael, Gregory Mcmichael, William R. Bryan, or Ahmaud Arbery. Please raise your hand if you, for any reason, have formed and expressed any opinion in regard to the guilt or innocence of the accused. Can't see the number. 272. Now, if you think you have, it's better to raise your hand if you've got a question, okay? Because we can follow up. 262. 263. And there's these glares that come off these cards. It's 543. And I had 2 down there. Is it, ma'am, all the way on the end? What is your number?
262 in the front row, far left, Your Honor.
Not 262, the behind. I thought there was a hand in the back.
272.
All right. Were you raising your hand? I couldn't tell. 272?
Yes.
You were. 273. 292. 294. And 298. Thank you. Please raise your hand if you have any prejudice or bias resting on your mind, either for or against the accused. $272, $273, $292. Thank you. And then finally, please raise your hands if your minds are not perfectly impartial between the state and the accused. I see no hand. Oh. 276. Better to err on the side of caution, right? Okay. All right, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Those are all of the questions that the court intends to ask at this time. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Judge, we are.
From the state.
Thank you. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Morning. All right, my name is Linda Dunikoski, and I, along with Larissa Olivier and Paul Camarillo, who will be joining us later, we represent the state in this case. We're the assistant district attorneys. Does anyone here believe they know me or Ms. Olivier? No cards. Is there anyone here who does not currently reside in Glenn County? No hands. Is there anyone here under the age of 18? No cards. And is there anyone here who has been convicted of a felony and not had your rights restored? No cards. Is there anyone here who sat on the grand jury that returned this indictment in June of 2020? No hands. Is there anyone here who is a post-certified law enforcement officer with arrest powers either locally in Georgia or federally? No hands. Is there anyone here who is 70 years of age or older who does not wish to serve on this jury? And we have 262. And we have 292? 294. Thank you. Is there anyone here who is a full-time student currently enrolled in and attending classes? No hands. Is there anyone here who is the full-time caretaker of a child 6 years of age or younger, and you have no reasonable means of alternative care for that child? No hands. Is there anyone here who is a full-time caretaker of a disabled or elderly person, and you have no other reasonable means of care for that person? No hands. Is there anyone here who has difficulty understanding the English language? No hands. And is there anyone here who has difficulty hearing? No hands. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start with a whole big set of questions, but the one thing I want to let you know is if you think it applies to you, raise your card. If you have a question about it, raise your card. If you're not sure, raise your card. The reason is we're doing general voir dire here that are kind of yes or no questions. But later, we're going to talk to you individually. So we're going to get the opportunity to actually, discuss with you what your issue is or what you have a question about, okay? And I'm also going to be talking about friends or family members. So when I say friends, I mean close personal friends that you have conversations with. And when I say close family members, I don't mean Uncle Bob in Iowa that you haven't talked to in 10 years. I'm talking about a close family member that you also talk to on a regular basis and have conversations with. So the first thing I want you guys to know is that we anticipate this case and the trial going through probably November 19th, which is the Friday before the week of Thanksgiving. So if you have a non-work-related conflict, like a scheduling conflict or something that's a hardship that you want us to know about, we want to hear about that. And when I say hardship or scheduling conflict, I'm talking about you have heart surgery scheduled in 2 weeks. You have airline tickets to fly to Vermont for the birth of your first grandchild, and this is a big moment in your life, and you've already paid for the tickets. Those are the kind of scheduling conflicts and things that we need to know about that's going on in your life from now through Thanksgiving. Does that apply to anyone? Please raise your hand. Wow, after that long speech, nobody. Oh, 282. All right, no one else. So, does anybody here know your elected official, the district attorney for the Brunswick Judicial Circuit, Keith Higgins? Are you related to him by blood or marriage, or do you know Mr. Keith Higgins? No hands. Your former district attorney was Miss Jackie Johnson. Is there anyone here related by blood or marriage, or know Miss Jackie Johnson? No hands. Now, is there anybody here who has any particular opinion about last year's election where District Attorney Jackie Johnson was defeated and Keith Higgins became your elected district attorney? Anybody have an opinion about that election? No hands. Is there anyone who has an opinion about how or why the Cobb County District Attorney's Office was assigned to prosecute this case by Georgia's Attorney General? Does anyone have any opinion about that? No hands? All right, and is there anybody who's going to be unable to give the state a fair trial because we're from Cobb County, we're from Marietta. We're not from here, we don't live here. Is there anybody who's not going to be able to give the state a fair trial because we're just not from Glenn County? No cards. All right, so the Waycross Judicial Circuit District Attorney is George Barnhill. Does anybody know Mr. Barnhill personally or related to him by blood or marriage? No cards. Now, George Barnhill Jr., a former assistant district attorney in this judicial circuit, who now privately practices here in Brunswick. Does anybody know George Barnhill Jr.? No cards. The Atlantic Judicial Circuit, that district attorney is Tom Durden. Does anyone know Mr. Durden, related to him by blood or marriage? No cards. Does anyone here personally know any assistant district attorney, either here in the state of Georgia or somewhere else, like a prosecutor? No cards. All right, so we've talked about prosecutors. Criminal defense attorneys, we have Mr. Jason Sheffield and Mr. Robert Rubin. Does anyone know Mr. Sheffield or Mr. Rubin?
Morning.
No cards. We also have Miss Laura Hogue and Mr. Frank Hogue. Does anyone know the Hogues? No cards. And then we have Mr. Kevin Goff. Is there anyone here who knows Mr. Goff or has ever worked with Mr. Goff or hired Mr. Goff? No cards. Now, with regard to the defendants, does anyone here personally know Travis Mcmichael? Anyone here know Greg Mcmichael? Is there anyone here who knows Mr. William, he goes by the nickname Roddy Bryan? No cards. Is there anyone here who knows a Miss Amy Elrod? And we have Juror 293. Is there anyone here who knows Lee Mcmichael, Greg Mcmichael's wife?
I think 291 maybe is
Oh, for Amy Elrod? Oh, I'm sorry. So 291. Thank you. Feel free to shout it out. You got to get my attention. Okay, I don't mind. So 291 for Miss Amy Elrod. Thank you very much. So let's go ahead and go back now. Lee Mcmichael. Anyone know Lee Mcmichael? Anyone know Lindsay Mcmichael, Travis Mcmichael's sister, Greg Mcmichael's daughter? No hands. Now, the victim in this case is Mr. Ahmaud Arbery. Does anyone here personally know Mr. Ahmaud Arbery? 275. Is there anyone here who knows his mother personally, Miss Wanda Cooper Jones? No cards. Does anyone know his father, Marcus Arbery Sr.? 275. All right. And does it, oh, and 262. Thank you. Anyone else? Now, does anyone here know Judge? Oh, and one more. 298. You know Mr. Marcus Arbery Sr.? Great. And yeah, bring it to my attention. Let me know. Anyone else? All right. Does anyone here know Judge Walmsley? No cards. All right, so we're going to talk about jury service now. Is there anyone here who has gone through this entire process? What I mean by that is you went through voir dire, which is jury selection. You were selected. You sat on the jury. You heard all the evidence. You went in the back and deliberated with the 11 other people, and you reached a verdict. Did anyone here go through that entire process? And we have 543. Anyone else? Okay, so juror 543, were you the foreperson?
Wait, are you talking in general or just for
No, for that trial.
which trial?
How many trials did you have to sit on?
Okay, yeah, in Chicago, I was a foreperson.
You were the foreperson. And okay, so in Chicago. How many trials have you sat on?
One.
Just the one in Chicago. Okay. And without telling me what the verdict was or what it was about, was your jury able to reach a verdict? Okay. Anyone else? No. Has anyone here ever sat on a grand jury? No hands. Now, when you guys got your jury summons, you kind of were directed to the clerk's website, and it had some information about the days to come and all that sort of information. It had COVID information there as well. But it also had some links to this case with some court documents. It's okay if you looked at them because they were there, okay, for you to look at those links, but we just need to know if you did or not. And they would have been like court documents, like you would have seen, something versus something in the indictment. They would have been, boring legal documents. Did anybody look at those? And it's okay if you did. So 543, 272, and 293. Anyone else? Okay. Please raise your card if you've served in the military. 275. And you know what? If you want to unclip it, you can unclip it and just raise it up and wave it at me. That's fine. If it makes you guys more comfortable, I'll be able to see you. You can unclip and wave. Is there anybody here with prior law enforcement training or law enforcement experience? So you may not be post-certified with arrest powers now, but you previously were. No cards. Does anyone here have a close personal friend or family member who is in law enforcement? I'm going to try and go in order here. We have 272. That's fine. See, you did the right thing. You raised your card. Perfect. 543, 263, 273, 276, 278, and 282, 292, 298. Right. Please raise your card or your hand if you have prior experience, work experience in the field of social work. No cards. Please raise your card if you have prior work experience in the field of counseling, psychology, psychiatry, if you have that as your undergraduate degree or you've been a counselor before. No cards. Please raise your hand or your card if you have prior work experience in the legal field. You're a lawyer. You have been a paralegal. You've been a legal assistant. Anything along the lines in the legal field. And we have 294. Please raise your hand or card if you have prior experience in the criminal justice system. And that can be you've worked at a prison or a jail, you have worked in probation, you have gone to prisons as a counselor, a minister, anything along the lines where you've worked within the criminal justice system. 294. Are you related to or do you have a close personal friend who actually works within a district attorney's office either here or anywhere else? No cards. Is there anyone here with medical training? And I don't mean you were a lifeguard or you have CPR. I mean like medical training, like undergrad degree, you've taken courses, it was your job. 294. Is there anyone here who's related by blood or marriage or has a close personal relationship with a criminal defense attorney? Is there anyone here who's ever had a bad experience with law enforcement? No cards. Anybody here have a good experience with law enforcement, such that it sticks out in your mind? No cards. Is there anyone here who's had a bad experience with a prosecutor? No cards. Anyone here have a bad experience with a criminal defense attorney? No cards. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about convictions, sort of arrests, prosecutions, convictions, that kind of thing. So I'm going to first ask you about crimes like DUI to something more serious, okay? So think about in terms of DUI, shoplifting, up to something more serious, not traffic tickets, not that sort of thing. So have you personally ever been arrested, convicted, or prosecuted for something like a DUI to something more serious? No cards. Do you have a close personal friend or family member who has been arrested, convicted, prosecuted for DUI to something more serious? And we have 262, 273. Okay, great. That was the right thing to raise your card. And we've got 275, 278, 292, 293, 294, and 298. Is there anyone here who feels that they've been ever falsely accused of a crime, whether it involved the police or not? Do you have any friends or family members who you think have been falsely accused of a crime, whether it involved the police or not? No hands for either question. All right, so we're going to talk about being the victim of a crime, being the victim of a crime. Has anyone here ever been the victim of a violent crime or a crime against their person, like an assault, armed robbery, or something like that's a violent crime, a crime against their person? 273, 292. Is there anyone here who has a close personal friend or family member that has been the victim of a crime against their person? No hands. Oh, I'm sorry. 26. Sure thing. We're looking for people who may know a friend or a family member who've had a crime against their person. So that could be anything from being robbed. It could also mean like you were taking your shopping cart and somebody grabbed your purse and knocked you down. It could be anything you consider to be a crime against your person, whether it's kind of violent or not. But also if there was a violent crime, such as an assault. 262. 278. Is there anyone else I missed? Okay. Right, friend or family member. So 272. So is there anyone here who's ever witnessed a crime in progress? 273.
I witnessed an arrest being made, and it was, I don't know if they were committing a crime there, if they were being arrested for it. I just remember that.
That was the right thing. That's a good one. Okay. And 278. Has anyone ever taken cell phone video of an incident or crime or arrest that's going on? No hands. All right, so we're going to talk about burglaries and home invasions. Burglaries, you came home and your stuff was gone. Home invasion, you are home and someone kicks the door in, or you wake up in the middle of the night and someone's in your house. So has anyone here, you, family member, close personal friend, been the victim of either a burglary or a home invasion? We've got 274, 275, 292, 293, 294, and 298. Is there anyone here, you yourself, close family member, close personal friend, who has had a firearm stolen out of your house or your car? And it could be any kind of firearm, but it's been stolen out of your house or your car. 274, 292, 293. Is there anyone here who's ever had to call 911 to report a crime? I'm not talking about medical emergencies or anything like that. I'm talking you've called 911 to report a crime. 262, 274, 276, 292, 293. Is there anyone here who's ever given a formal statement to law enforcement? I'm not talking about that, fender bender, you're standing by the side of the road telling the officer about that. I'm talking about you've had to give a formal statement about a crime to a law enforcement officer. All right, so I've got 274. Go ahead, keep them up for me until I call your number, please. So 274, that's great. 277, thank you. 281, 281. Who else got 292 and 293? Did I miss anyone? Great. Is there anyone here who's ever had to be a witness at trial? And that means you're in the little chair in the witness box. You've had to raise your hand. Usually there's a judge. Sometimes there might have been a jury. Civil or criminal, doesn't matter. But at a trial, you've had to be a witness and testify. 278. Please raise your hand if you've ever taken it upon yourself to investigate a crime. No cards. Do you know anybody who's ever taken it upon themselves in a non-law enforcement capacity to investigate a crime? 262. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you kind of a big, broad question. So let me go through it all and I'll get to it. First off, take a look around. Do any of you recognize each other? That's the first question. Anybody know anybody else here? I know it's hard. We all have masks on. So raise your card if you think you do. 272. All right. And all right. Usually we got two people who recognize each other, but I'm not sure. But that's okay. Now, when you were over at Selden Park last Monday, you were there and you probably saw some people, right? Recognized a few people? What I'm asking is this. That other person that you saw, if you were selected to be on the jury and they were on the jury, would it be a problem for you? Like as in your son was over at Selden Park as well. Your boss was over at Selden Park. Someone who works and reports to you was over at Selden Park. So it might be a problem if you were both on this jury. So if that applies to you, please raise your card. 298. And 273. Anyone else? All right. It's a reverse question. Is there anyone here who does not own any type of firearm and there is no firearm in your household? 543, 276. Sure, you don't personally own a firearm and there are no firearms in your household. 262, 281. Gotcha, 281, 291, and 298. Is there anyone here who's ever had to carry a gun as part of their job? No hands? Is there anyone here who's ever taken it upon themselves to get firearms training? No cards. Please raise your hand if you've lived in Glenn County for less than 5 years. 543, 281, 291, and 294. Is there anyone here who currently resides in the Satilla Shores neighborhood? Is there anyone here who previously resided in the Satilla Shores neighborhood? Is there anyone here who may be particularly familiar with this location, Satilla Shores, because you've got friends, family members, you go there, that kind of thing? So we have 262, 273, 293, and 294. Another neighborhood, Royal Oaks. Is there anybody here who currently resides in Royal Oaks? Is there anyone here who previously resided in Royal Oaks? Is there anyone here especially familiar with Royal Oaks because you have friends or family members that do reside there?
That part of work too? If you have to go to that location a lot for your job?
Sure, we'll go ahead and take that because you're familiar with it based on that. So 293, anyone else? 272. Yeah, any reason you might be especially familiar with these neighborhoods, and it can be friends, family, or work related. 262. For Royal Oaks? It's off Highway 17 at exit 29. No, okay. Is there someone else? 298, you know Satilla Shores or Royal Oaks? Royal Oaks. And 274, did you have your hand up? Okay. That's okay. All right. Is there any...
You're allowed to do that also.
Yes. All right. Is there anyone here who's familiar with the Fancy Bluff neighborhood, which is across from Royal Oaks over across 17? So familiar with Fancy Bluff. We've got 262, 275, 293, and 298. Is there anyone here currently living in Fancy Bluff? Anyone who previously lived in Fancy Bluff? No cards. All right, so this is a question about you knowing yourself. Is there anyone here who has a religious, moral, or ethical conviction that would keep you from deliberating with others and rendering a verdict in this case? And what that basically means, 262, right out of the gate. So what that can mean is if you're selected, we decide to put you on the jury, and you go in the back, you're never going to render a verdict of guilty, not guilty, because that's all you're going to be asked to do is guilty, not guilty. Is there anybody here because of a religious, moral, or ethical conviction that would not be able to deliberate with others and render a verdict? 263, 276, 2... Sure. Juror 262 is asking if this is a death penalty case.
As jurors, first of all, it is not up to the jurors to determine any punishment in any case under the circumstances here. And the answer to your question is no. And it shouldn't affect any of the answers here today, but just to answer that question, no, if that was weighing upon your mind.
Okay. So, and I want to make sure, now that you know that, we have, are there religious, moral, ethical convictions that would keep you from passing judgment on another person to render a guilty or not guilty verdict and deliberate? Does that apply to everyone still? So go ahead, raise your cards for me again so I make sure I get everybody. No, not for you. You're putting it down. All right, so 262, we're taking you off. 263. 276 has her card down now. And 298, that still applies to you, ma'am. Okay, so 298. And 272, it still applies to you? Okay. Is there anyone here who does not belong to a religious, fraternal, or social organization? What I mean by that is you don't go to church, synagogue, or mosque. You do not belong to the bowling league, a bridge club, a book club. You do not belong to any professional organizations in regard to your profession. Like if you were in marketing, you don't belong to the American Marketing Association. You just don't belong to any sort of those groups. Is there anyone here that applies to? 276 and 291, 292. Please raise your hand if you, a relative, or a very close personal friend has ever been arrested and the circumstances were such that you thought they were treated unfairly by the police or the criminal justice system. 273, 298. Please raise your hand if you have a friend or family member who's been arrested and or convicted for kidnapping or false imprisonment. No cards. Please raise your hand if you, a relative, or a close personal friend has ever been arrested for shooting someone or shooting at someone. No cards. Is there anyone here who has a relative or a close personal friend who's been arrested and or convicted for the crime of murder? No cards. Oh, 292. Thank you. 292. All right, is there anyone here who feels that they're not going to be able to follow the law if they disagree with the law or think that the law should be something else? Judge Walmsley's going to give you the law, but we're trying to find out if you're somebody who's just not going to follow the law, if you disagree with it or think it should be something else. Does that apply to anyone? No cards. And is there anyone here who wants to serve on this jury? No cards. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do this next part. You're going to have to bear with me, okay? The next part involves potential witnesses that would be at trial, okay? And so I'm going to read off the list in a couple sections. I'm going to try and go expeditiously, but you've got to call out, like get my attention, start waving me down if I go past. All right? So the first group of people we're going to do is we're going to do some Glenn County law enforcement officers. These are police officers from Glenn County. William Duggan, Sheila Ramos, Chris Lowther, Ricky Shane, 292, knows Lowther. Ricky Shane Minshew, Jeffrey Brandenberry, Parker Marcy, Brad Butler, Caitlin Roberts Phillips, Roderick Nohilly, Adam Jackson, Stephen Lowry, Brandon Gregory, Diana Bibby, Sherry Bashler, Chris Hatcher, Robert Rash, Officer Powers, Officer Stansberry, Officer Owens, Ronald Cooper. We have Ronald Cooper, 293. And then we have with the Glenn County Sheriff's Office, Detective Stephanie Herndon Britt, 293 and 277. All right, I'm now going to go ahead and go through the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Now, there's two parts to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. There are special agents, which just mean they're detectives, and then we've got the other side, which is the crime lab. So does anyone here know GBI agent Jason Seacrest, Jessica Hamilton, Lawrence Kelly, Brian Smith, Richard Dial, Garrett Morton, Matthew Heath, Amanda Barker, Jennifer Woodward. No hands. And then with the crime lab, James Jim Gordon, Amanda Cook, Jesse Worley, Ann Kistler Rao, Brian Leopard, Dr. Edmund. Oh, Brian Leopard, 272. Anyone else know Mr. Leopard? And then Dr. Edmund Donahue. All right, these are non-law enforcement folks. Joe Mandela, Joseph Allen Bartlett, Subi Lawrence, Annabelle Beasley, Christy Barber, Matthew Albenzi, John Ronald Olson, goes by Ronnie Olson, Diego Perez, his wife Brooke Perez. Does anyone here know, for the Glenn County 911 Operations Division, Kara Richardson, Jamie Dunwoody? All right. We also have non-law enforcement, Mr. Larry English, Amy English, Kelly Parr, or her father Randall Parr, Daniel Alcott, Christine Alcott, Judith Alcott, Kim Ballesteros, Carol Flowers, Lauren Bennett, Linda Randall, Ashley Wittenberg, Danielle Stoddard, Cynthia Drummond, James Trimmings, 275. Catherine Miles, Cody Johannes, Derek Thomas, Hillary Lauren Brady Germano, Josh McGowan, Kyle Meisner, Nicole Lee Joyner, Rusty Russ Wayne Johnson, Zach Langford, 293, you know Zach Langford? You know Ashley Langford? No? No. Zach only. Heaven Bryan, 277. Peyton Thompson. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to hand you over to the defense. They have some questions for you as well.
Mr. Sheffield.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you also from all of us for being here. Point of order. We have read the forms that you have filled out and really appreciate all the honesty and the length that you have gone to be candid in those forms and in those answers. Nothing that you have said is going to hurt our feelings. It's not going to make it uncomfortable for us. And we just want you to understand over the last week and a half, we've heard a lot of additional, very honest answers in the sessions that we've had one-on-one with jurors. So we invite you to be honest. You will not be judged in any kind of a negative way. We thank you in advance for that. I have about 15 minutes worth of questions that'll go pretty quickly. Now that you've sat here for about an hour, I want to place Travis Mcmichael for you, formerly in the Coast Guard, formerly working for Metson Marine. If that puts a place on a name or a face, does anybody recognize him now that I've added those facts? Okay. How about his dad, Greg Mcmichael? Now that we've sat here for a minute, anybody recognize Greg or feel like there may be an association? No? Okay. And then also Mr. Roddy Bryant. You're welcome to stand up and come around if you can't see. I see a hand for 293.
Hey, recognize me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I recognize it.
Okay. All right. We'll drill down on that later. Very good. Thank you. 293. And 263. And 277. You're going to notice that I'm going to go real slow and I'm going to go row by row when you raise your hands, okay? Okay. There's been a lot of talk about this case, a lot of articles, a lot of news. As you have listened to all that before you've come here today, have any of you developed a negative opinion about Travis Mcmichael or Greg Mcmichael or Roddy Bryant? If you have developed a negative opinion, whatever that means to you, just raise your hand. 262. And once I call your number, you're welcome to put it down. 263. 543. 272. 273. 274. 275. 276. 277. 278. 279. 282. 292. 294. And 298. Very good. Thank you. So we, criminal defense attorneys, represent those who are accused of crimes. Do any of you have any negative thoughts or feelings about criminal defense lawyers for doing the type of work that we do? It's okay if you have a negative feeling about us, but none of you do. Excellent. Thank you. Have any of you ever decided to vote for or support a political candidate who had as part of their platform to limit gun rights in any way, whether the types of guns that can be carried or that guns should be carried, supported a political candidate who had as part of their platform? Okay, very good. Do any of you sitting here now oppose laws, disagree with the laws that allow people to carry firearms, either openly or concealed, into public? You oppose, you don't like those laws, you oppose them. Just raise your hand if you feel that way. 274 and 294. There's been a lot of participation in marches around town on the social justice movement. Have any of you participated in any of the demonstrations or marches around town, either before or after the shooting and death in this case? If you've gone out to listen or support or march or walk or whatever it is, please raise your hand. 298. Thank you. If any of you have supported in any way the Black Lives Matter movement, movement that's not only local but national, or if you have supported the Justice for Ahmaud movement or the hashtag I Run With Maud, whether that be a bumper sticker, a sign in the yard, or through social media, Facebook posts, reposting things that people send to you. Anything that deals with that type of support, please raise your hand. 272, 273, 275, 292, and 298. Thank you. Please raise your card if you feel that you have ever been denied an opportunity because of your ethnicity or your race. If you feel like anybody has ever denied you any opportunity for one of those reasons. Yes, ma'am. 262 and 298. If you feel like you've ever been falsely accused or placed under suspicion for doing something wrong because of your ethnicity or your race, please raise your card. 272 and 298. Thank you. Do you agree with this statement? The old Georgia state flag, the one that flew from 1956 to 2002, was a racist symbol. It was taken out of circulation in 2002 because a lot of people held that belief. Does anybody here feel that way? Okay, 272. Thank you. Do you agree with this statement? People of color are not treated fairly in the criminal justice system. 262, 272, 273, 274, 275, 279, 270. 292, 298. Do you agree with this statement? Police in this country do not treat black folks and white folks equally. Police in this country, whether that be because you had an experience with it or just because that's how you feel locally, statewide, or nationally. 262. Yeah, it's a comment on the police and whether or not you feel that police treat black folks and white folks equally. Is there something about policing where you feel like it's not equal treatment, people of color and white people? Where did I leave off? 26, maybe I just, all right, 272, sorry, 273, 274, 275, 278, 279, 292, 294, and 298. Thank you. Who feels that a psychologist or a psychiatrist could diagnose just about anybody with a mental illness these days? It's a comment on the field of psychiatry. Pretty much anybody gets diagnosed with a mental illness these days. 277. 294. Thank you. Please raise your card if you have an opinion about the lapse of time between the incident date in this case of February 23rd, 2020, and then the arrest date several months later in May of 2020. If you have an opinion about that lapse of time, please raise your card. 262, 272, 275, 277, 279, 292, 294, and 298. Thank you. We want to make sure that we have your full attention should you be selected for the trial of this case. The trial will go on daily from probably 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning until dinner time. There'll be a morning break, an afternoon break, and lunch break. But we want your attention while we're presenting evidence to you. Does anybody fear that something going on at work or at home will cause them to be divided, that we will not have your full attention because something is going on in your life at work or at home that would prevent you from giving us your full attention at all times? 263, 546. Yeah, sorry, it was a glare. 272, 279, 292, and 298. Similarly, as it relates to your attention and whether your attention will be impaired, is there a mental issue that you have, a psychological issue that you're working through, or a physical ailment or hearing impairment or visual impairment that could affect your ability to pay attention for the periods of time that we're in court? Please raise your card if you have one of those things. 263, 272, 273, 276, 278, 279, 294, and 298. Ultimately, if you're selected, you'll participate in deliberation with 11 other jurors, and you'll hopefully come to a decision about this case. But we want to know if there's anything about you coming to a decision, no matter what it is, not guilty or guilty, that you feel you won't be able to do because of what might happen to you in the community after this case is over. That you have a concern about your involvement on the jury and rendering a decision in this case, and that concern relates to what might happen after this case is over. Raise your card. 263 and 272. And lastly, we know you filled these forms out quite a while ago. It could have been several weeks, maybe. If you now thinking back, whether it's one of your social media names or handles or any of the information that you filled out has changed, you have new accounts or you have new thoughts or feelings about it that are not currently reflected on the form, we don't want to hold you to the form if something has changed. So if there's been any changes to the forms, please raise your hand and we can follow up about what those things might be, even if you've changed your social media address. No changes. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you all very much.
All right, thank you, counsel. Ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to do at this point is we're going to take a 10-minute recess. And during that recess, I'm going to ask that you step out of the jury assembly room. During the recess, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. Don't go looking for any information about the case. And if anybody tries to talk to you about the case or is talking about the case in your presence of hearing, please notify the court and we'll go ahead and get that addressed. So again, don't get on the phone and start reaching out to spouses, friends, family, or anybody else and talking about the case or the process. Don't go looking at your news feeds or anything having to do with media coverage or anything about the case. And again, if somebody approaches you about the case, let us know. So the way the process is going to work at this point is you're going to come back into this jury assembly room. We will have moved into the courtroom, and then based on your responses to the questions here, there may be some follow-up with each of you individually, and we'll work through that as quickly as possible. Again, I do appreciate your patience with regard to the process, and I thank you for being here. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. We'll see some of you back in the courtroom in just a little bit.